All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. The LOI is back, first weekend of action in the bag, and we'll be chatting about that with Anthony Pyne of RT Sport Online, the 42.ie journalist David Sneyd, and also we'll be joined later on by former League and Cup winner Graham Gartland. But Anthony, you've got a busy bit of travelling to do off to Marbella.
Oh yeah, someone has to do it, Raf. After Marbella this evening, Ireland are playing China in a friendly on Wednesday. So this is sort of the first window of three in the run-up to the Women's World Cup in July in Australia and New Zealand. So really important, you know, these windows are short and sweet, but everybody's got to put their hand up for, you know, trying to catch Vera Pauw's eye. There's a few new faces in the squad. Aoife Mannion, Marissa Shiva, and Australia-born Deborah Ann Della Harp, who plays with Sydney FC. They're the three new arrivals into the squad. And that kind of freshens things up and keeps people on edge. They did have a behind closed doors game against Germany on Friday. So I think the new players probably would have got, Della Harp only sort of got clearance yesterday. So you might see her maybe for a few minutes on Wednesday. I'd say the other two probably got the bulk of their minutes on Friday. I'm not so sure how much of a run they'll get on Wednesday. But it all kind of gets a bit more real now, Raf. You know, everybody's in good spirits. We've been chatting to the players during the week, and they're all, you know, as they always are, saying the right things, and there's good vibes and a good atmosphere in the camp. But the reality is, the squad that goes to Australia, Pauw can only bring 23 players. 3 of them will be goalkeepers. So, you know, players are going to miss out. Players who've been on the journey over the last 4 or 5 years are going to miss out. They just are. That's just the way it is. And I think that realization is maybe just dawning on some of the Ireland players now. Not that there's any sort of hostility or animosity in the camp towards any new people coming in. I'd say it's quite the opposite. But, you know, it's just human nature. If you see someone coming in your position at this point in the campaign, you're probably thinking, oh, you know, here we go. You know, more competition. Don't need this. Mannion is a centre-half that plays with Man United, a good centre-half who's been very unlucky with injury. She had a really bad cruciate injury and is only sort of coming back now. She's still only getting back to playing football, really. I think Marissa Shiva is an interesting one because she was a very good middle-distance runner. She plays in America. She plays in the NWSL in America with Washington Spirit. And the reason I would keep an eye on her is because I think she's potentially like with Heather Pyne. Heather Pyne is Vera Pauw's go-to striker. She doesn't score goals. You know, she scored 1 goal in 30 games. So she's not in the team to do that. What she does is run the channels really well. It's kind of like John Aldridge under Charlton. Years ago, John Aldridge was playing with Liverpool in the late 80s, banging in goals. Couldn't score for Ireland. Like, it took him 20-odd games. The reason was that he was never in the box. He was running channels. He was chasing down defenders, pinning fullbacks, which is similar to what Pyne does for Ireland. And if you look at Ireland's attacking options, they don't really have anyone else that can do that job in the same way. So it's possible she's looking at someone like Shiva, who I haven't seen her, Raf, but as I said, I know her pedigree as a track and field star. She has a really good, strong pedigree, so she can run and she can work. So we might see her on Wednesday, and that's one to keep an eye on. But as I said, yeah, everybody will be trying to put their hands up, and this is where every minute you get in the pitch counts, because, you know, after this there'll be another camp in April, and then I think another one in June, and a farewell game in July. So not a huge amount of chances for anybody new coming in to force their way onto the plane.
Yeah, and Vera Pauw had flagged that there would be, you know, a look at other options outside of the players that have actually got the squad to the World Cup. And in terms of the chances of domestic-based players, it was just from a conversation I had with James O'Callaghan, the Pyne manager at the League of Ireland launch a couple of weeks ago. He was, you know, in terms of growing the league domestically, he feels it's vitally important that in the squad itself that there are a number of domestic-based players. Now, there are a few obvious ones like Anya O'Gorman and Abby Larkin, but what are the chances of there being a small cohort outside of those two?
Well, I mean, Vera Pauw has been kind of open about her, you know, the gap in fitness levels and conditioning between, say, the Women's Super League and the Women's National League, and she would run camps in league domestic-based camps as well in between these windows. So she'll be getting a look at everybody and getting, you know, people will get their chance to put their hand up. I think it's very difficult, though. I mean, the fact that she's bringing in some of the likes of Mannion and Marissa Shiva in particular, like they are coming from full-time setups where they are being exposed to that type of training and facilities, and are probably just in their fitness levels are just that little bit better. And she's going to put so much weight on that, so much importance on that, when you consider the two teams that they play first up are Australia and Canada. You know, two really, really good sides, both in the top 7 or 8 ranked teams in the world. I think Canada are 5th. I think Australia are inside the top 10, obviously the co-hosts. So I'm not so sure, like, in terms, like, if you're asking me, is there anybody who has yet to really break through, who's going to do really well in the Women's National League over the next couple of months? Say at somewhere like Athlone, there's a lot of good young players and a lot of good underage Ireland internationals actually at that loan. I still think it'll be very difficult for them. I just think she might stick to what she knows and trusts at this point.
Yeah, and that friendly against China, it's Wednesday in Marbella. Anthony Pyne's going to be there for RTÉ Sport Online, and it's kicking off at 1 p.m. coverage on the RTÉ News channel at 5 to 1, so 12:55 p.m. David, obviously this is your first appearance on the podcast in this calendar year, and in the meantime, I have been reading a couple of your pieces on the 42, and one of the ones that did jump out to me was Shane Farrell of Shelbourne. So last time I would have seen him would have been the cup final back in November, but he's got a really interesting personal story. So maybe if you want to kind of sum up who he is to people who may only know him as the footballer.
Yeah, well, first of all, good to see us, lads. It's good to be back. Yeah, like the cup final, well, that's pretty much where he started with the article. Because like people who would have watched it, like, and he even said himself, like, he had an absolute disaster of a game. He got whipped off after 45 minutes at half time because he had a groin injury going into it, but it's just a very interesting guy, you know. Like, he obviously has been at Shells now for 5 or 6 years, but he kind of joined Shells at a point in his life where he was actually considering giving up football. There was a couple of bereavements that were very, very close to him, and he was kind of, there's one of those quotes where, you know, sometimes you speak to people and it kind of, sometimes when you're interviewing people, maybe something that can be said that can be missed, but then there's other times where something kind of stops you in your tracks a little bit. And then one of the lines where he said was, he was like, feck's sake, like, people keep dying. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of was where he was at in his own head, where there was like family and friends who passed away who are very close to him. And I just met him. He's from Finglas, and I just met him for a chat, and just talking about his mom, and like part of the reason how he got even into talking about his mom and stuff about his sister. So his sister was, about when he was about 15 or 16, was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but the reason why we even got talking about it was all centered around that cup final, the fact that his mom was even able to go to it because, like, she would be a 24/7 carer for his sister. So, and like, he was talking about they'd been in a hotel in town with the Shells players, but because of the nature of how the game went, he wanted to get out there, and he just got back to Finglas, got back to his local, and he was surrounded by friends and family, and it kind of was just a reminder of just how far he'd come. And just speaking to him, because he's only a young man, he's only 22, 23 years of age, and just speaking to him and listening to just what he's already been through, like, just to even be where he is, and he even said himself was a success. Excuse me. So yeah, it's just one of those. I'm not sure there's many. Well, there could be. I'm sure there will be. Everyone has their own struggles, but it's just one of those stories that once you get chatting to him, the football a little bit takes second stage, but then also you just see how important it is to him as well. And hopefully that kind of came through in the article with him, because he's just a genuine lovely fella. Yeah, and anybody who's looking for it, the title is "When I See My Ma Smiling Now, It's the Best Feeling Ever to See Her Happy." And on that note as well, Graham Gartland, I think you've arrived on the scene late into the box.
More late into tackles than arriving late into the box, but yeah, I managed to nick the odd goal every now and then. Important ones. That was the main thing. Rafa scored important goals.
Yeah, and of course, as I said at the very top, the League of Ireland was back with Premier Division and First Division, and looking through the results. Before we do that, Graham, like, first impressions, first week back, obviously after a 3-month break.
To be honest with you, I thought the excitement from everybody, all the fans, everybody that went to the games was brilliant. The attendances was up, the marketing from the FAI seems to be added, the coverage from RTÉ was good, the graphics were good. You know, all of us should add to a product. To judge teams off the back of one game is different. It's not something that I do. I think the league doesn't settle down for a good 10 games. You see where teams are with squads, you see where teams are with injuries, you see where teams are with suspensions, and how they can handle the marathon that is the season. But in terms of the product and how it looked, and the fans that are at, you know, sell out in down in Turner's Cross, a sell out in Sligo, a sell out down in Inchicore. Like this is brilliant. Like I don't think you'd have to go back a long way to get that for an opening day of the season where majority of the games are selling out. So it's a fantastic sort of excitement and enthusiasm for the league, which is something that it needs to be keep driven forward. They need to keep driving it. They need to improve a lot of things to make sure that you can keep getting returning punters in through the gates. You know, it's something we always touch on, but make it that it's a comfortable place to go and watch a game of football. It's enjoyable and it's places you can bring your kids and your family. So from that side of it, it's great to have the league back.
Yeah, and cumulatively, I think well over 20,000 in terms of attendances across the country. Also in the first division, Kerry FC's first game, also a sellout at home. Maybe they didn't get the result they wanted, but that's not really what they're looking at the moment. But anyway, results overall in the Premier Division on Friday night: St. Pat's 1, Derry City 1, Cork City 1, Bohemians 2. That was the TV game on RT2 and the RT Player. Dundalk 1, UCD 1. Again, UCD proving that they're not going to be an easy kind of pushover in the league. Shelbourne 0, Drogheda 0, and then on Saturday night, Shamrock Rovers, the champions, went to Sligo Rovers and drew 1-1 at the showgrounds. But first things first, Graham, in terms of Cork and Bows, Conan Byrne on the commentary or in the analysis during the game, he was describing the first half as men against boys. Was that how you kind of saw
it? Yeah, I just thought they looked like Bows looked a little bit hungrier at the time. You know, they got around the pitch a lot quicker. Set pieces wise, they looked really dangerous. Cork, I think, just were a little bit nervous and apprehensive going into it. Maybe the fourth home game, big crowd, everything about it. And then, like you said, I think in the second half, then maybe because when they go 2-0 down, they've nothing to lose and they're playing into the shed and there's a bit of a crowd behind them and they get the goal back. And then you just see them up in the tempo and the energy, and it's direct. They're going into the box, they're putting Talbot under pressure, they're causing mistakes. And then they get it back to 2-1, and then you think, right, there's a chance here. And in fairness, some of the chances, I think Kerr cleared one off the line. The left back Kerr cleared one off the line the 94th minute, and then Talbot makes a save in the 96th minute. So they were pushing for an equaliser, but they probably need to stop giving away soft goals. They gave up a lot of chances from set pieces in the first half, and then the goal they conceded in the second half, the goalkeeper just has to stay in the middle of the goal. So I think they'd be disappointed in terms of the goals they've given away. But they can't wait 45 minutes to start playing a game of football or wait till they're 2-0 down to start maybe playing the way they know they can or with the tempo that they can play at.
Yeah, and those goalkeeping errors, Anthony, because you were doing the match tracker across the Friday night, I think they're fairly glaring. Toby Oluwayemi for Cork City, obviously, as Graham said there, like if he stays in the middle of the goal, he saves that, and then James Talbot as well, which maybe was a little bit unfortunate, just sort of treading on the ball.
Yeah, it was mad because I was looking at it and thinking maybe the two keepers sort of defined the night up until around the 75-minute mark. The young keeper just lost his bearings for the goal. And I thought Talbot had sort of generally exuded a bit authority and was able to calm things down. I thought Bowles were very good for certainly the first sort of 70 minutes. They were just in complete control. Connolly was really good. He just gives them pace. I thought Afolabi was very good. But then Talbot just had a mad last 15 minutes. He clashed with his centre half around the 77-minute mark, where he kind of got away with it. They ran into each other and he picked the ball back up. And then soon after that, he trod on the ball for the goal. And the whole dynamic of the game changes then. Because the crowd suddenly gets up, you know, I think there was there 6,500 there or something like that.
Yeah,
really, really good crowd, and it just shows you, like, I mean, that type of atmosphere, it's hard not to get swept up in it. And I think he suddenly balls were suddenly backs to the wall for that last 10 minutes, having been absolutely in control, like totally in control. Cork brought on Matt Healy did really well when he came out for Cork, because he just gave him a little bit of dynamism, a little bit of urgency, and it suited them because in the last 10 minutes the game became a bit mad and hectic and frantic, whereas up to then it hadn't been. You know, Bowls just control the tempo. They play the game at their own pace, slow it down. And it's going forward for Cork, that's something for them to take from it, because they will have Turner's Cross every second week. And it will generate an atmosphere that very few grounds in the League of Ireland is going to be able to generate that type of atmosphere. So you think maybe they can use that to their advantage. But it's going to be hard for them, because as Graham said, this league is a slog. Like, this is about the grind. You know, we might touch on Drogheda United later. I think Drogheda have a chance. There's only two part-time teams in the league, and Drogheda are one of them and UCD. But they're used to the grind. You know, it's all about the grind. It's every week. There's no easy games. Like, Shamrock Rovers go to Drogheda next week. They had a bad record against Drogheda last season. Bit of a bogey team, so you never know. Like, every single game is going to be tough. And you know, so Cork I've got to learn a few lessons pretty quickly. But certainly that last 10 minutes was maybe just a little bit of a sighter for them, where just to give them a bit of hope and positive going forward, because it was crazy. And credit to Talbot, because as Graham says there, having made that mistake, he made a great save right at the end, and that was a really good save. Like, it was right on the goal line there, where, you know, he had to kind of keep his head and keep his can just when it mattered most, because that would have been 2 points thrown away for Bowls, really, because they were so much in control for the vast majority of the game, I thought.
Yeah, especially their forward line with Afolabi, and then also Coote on one side and Dylan Colley on the other. All really impressive. Let's listen to the managers now and what they had to say. So Colin Healy and also Declan Devine.
Colin, at the very end there, the shed almost sucked the ball in. How did you see that moment at the end? Did you think it might have been over the line?
I don't know. It looked pretty close. I don't know. Listen, Darragh got a good header. I thought he's headed down. He could have headed higher, and you know. But it's obviously it's not gone behind the line. Like, but you know, at the end, you know, we went for it. Probably in the first half, with the system that we had, did a lot of possession, but we were giving away silly possession as well. So we changed it at half time, went to back four, and thought we were more aggressive, and we had a lot of more chances. But I mean, you look at Bowes, and they had 2 chances and they scored.
Matt Healy did well for you when he came on as well. It must be difficult to get the new players, you know, into the system working for you. But you gave a lot of players game time today as well. There's something to work on for the season.
Absolutely. No, listen, I was being careful with Matty. Matty had a tight strain, so I didn't want to start him. I just got to be careful, because he was touch and go before the game. So listen, he came on. Listen, Matty's a fantastic footballer, and you can see when he came on is that the quality that he shows. Like, but overall, I didn't think you know, we were good. We were good enough on the ball. We were a bit sloppy, and we need to be better than that.
Big crowd. Was it an occasion that maybe took a bit much out of your players at the beginning? Were they overawed perhaps by how big an occasion it was?
I just thought maybe we looked a small bit nervous in the first half, even when don't get me, you got to give credit to Bowes as well. They kept good possession, you know. So listen, but the system that we had, sometimes that allows you to do it, you know. I mean, listen, Cork and Buckley were getting on the ball very, very easily, and you know, they were running the game. But we changed it at half time. We corrected it. We had a few chances in the second half, but we didn't take them.
Well, hopefully you'll have nights like this again, but with better results. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Cheers.
Declan, you told me all you wanted on the first day was 3 points, so you got it, but I bet you didn't want the tension at the end.
Listen, Tony, we knew coming here it was going to be a battle, right? The atmosphere was electric. It's an amazing football club with an amazing manager, and they really put it up in the last 20 minutes. As we spoke about for 2 weeks, we are players that, you know, when you come to Turner's Cross and you're playing and defending that shed, the fans nearly sucked the ball in. But what was really pleasing for me tonight was such a group of players being able to dig in. We didn't do ourselves any favours with a goal. We should have seen the game out, but we'll learn that. But our bunch of fans down here that have got behind the team after a really difficult end of last season, it's just pulling the whole thing together, and they start with 3 points. It's simply brilliant.
He's been a hugely important player for Bowes, your goalkeeper James Talbot. Was that a hamstring injury he might have, or how is he?
No, listen, he's the best in my opinion. I just look at him, you know, he'll be a massive addition to us this year, having missed so many games last year. But look, we're delighted. We just come in here getting the result. I felt that when we got our second goal, we were well deserving. I thought Ali Coote and John Afolabi were outstanding in the game. Adam McDonald, you know, people say he's a number 10. Well, tonight he done some shift in terms of trying to get that ball back. So all in all, I don't want to be playing Keith Buckley at right back. That doesn't want to where I want to play him. but he's fed it on there tonight, and everybody has given a serious shift, and thankfully we go up a road with 3 points, because other teams will find it difficult here.
Well done.
Thank you.
That was Bohemians manager Declan Devine, and before that is Cork City counterpart Colin Healy. Before we move on to some of the other games, Graham, just in terms of the step up that we've seen there in terms of the gap between Cork City and Bohemians, especially in the first half, does it just illustrate like how tough that is going to be for Cork, I suppose, just to get up to speed?
Yeah, but I think Colin spoke really honestly after the game. He says there was probably a bit of nerves there, and them nerves will go the more experience they get in the league and the more experience they get playing in front of the bigger crowds. That will ease and they'll show a bit more of themselves. I think what he touched on there about minding players to make sure that they're right, that will be tough for the likes of Cork and Drogheda and these teams that haven't got bigger squads, that they can't risk a Matty Healy to play in the game knowing that he might be out for another couple of weeks. Where the lads with the bigger squads like Derry and Derry and Rovers can play lads, but that might be carrying knocks. But there's also somebody waiting in the wings that maybe has similar quality ready to play. So I think in terms of, you see Colin trying to manage his squad where he doesn't want to risk him and not have Matt Healy for the next 3 or 4 games. So I think that stuff like that he might find tough in terms of managing his squad, but you can see that he's thinking long term with Matty Healy, that he's going to need him for the next few games. But I think the nerves will go. They'll dissipate as the season goes on. They'll get more used to playing at home. They'll know maybe how to manage the home games a little bit better in terms of, keeping it tight as they can going into the last 10 minutes of the games, and then having that shed behind them and having the momentum, and mightn't be pretty at times, but they're getting the ball in the box, they're causing chances, and that's where they might start nicking 1-0 wins with late goals down in Turner's Cross, and then what they can pick up from the way from home is a bonus then.
Yeah, and David, you were at Richmond Park for Pats and Derry City, which ended 1-1. Obviously, Derry took the lead early on. Jordan McAneff with it was a strange looking finish anyway, from what I saw on the in the highlights after.
No, I don't think it did. He kind of shot it into the ground and kind of flew up a little bit. It was almost like, remember Mesut Ozil had that little kind of like
kicked it in.
It would kind of look like that, because we looked at that on the replay a few times and didn't seem like it took a deflection.
He was sort of half falling, wasn't he, David? And it caught it like on the way down or something. He was falling.
Because he'd done well, so I don't know, like, if you haven't seen the goal, he kind of read the little play out from Joe Redmond, who other than that had been very good in the game, and then just drove at them, and then Vladisław Creative was kind of tracking him back, and he tried to just kind of get him off balance a little bit, and I think that's part of the reason that fed into the finish. He was just kind of trying to get something off a bit, but any way he could. So, but it was a smashing game.
Yeah, and Joe Redmond, of course, equalised at the end from a set piece. So what was your impression? Like, obviously, great crowd there as well, but like just in terms of the impressions of both teams, because Pats, of course, were inconsistent last season, and Derry City, there's a huge amount of spotlight on them, obviously, after the way they ended last season. Yeah,
so there was something happening in the game that I think might happen a bit more. So basically, around the 16, 17 minute, Pats were dominating. Pats were all over. Derry couldn't get a foothold in the game at all. Like, obviously, he had to make a change during the warm-up when Michael Duffy picked up a knock and Ollie O'Neill came in, and he started out wide. But Brian Maher went down with, I have to say, it was an injury. Like, that's what he went down with. But basically, it was a chance for Rudy Higgins to basically, as soon as it happened, you could tell. And listen, you could tell what was happening. Like, anybody with a bit of cop on could tell. As soon as it happened, all the Derry players were straight on over to the touchline. And he basically reconfigured midfield, reconfigured the forward line, brought O'Neill in, made sure Graydon was a bit further up because he had been far out on the right. And you could see Tim Clancy went over as this was happening to try and they were chatting. They obviously got on well, the two managers, and he was trying to have a little leer there and trying to make a bit of a joke out of it. But then as it quickly became apparent that they were doing a little mini team talk, and while the treatment was happening to Brian Maher, and fair play, like the Oscars are coming on, Brian Maher could be in for Best Supporting Actor, I'd say, for that in terms of it. And everyone even speaking after the game, kind of Tim Clancy kind of referenced it in the point of view of that was just Derry being a bit cute and a bit smart. And even with the goal, saying like Derry's goal, he should have been brought down a bit quicker. Like, he could have easily have just taken the yellow a bit soon, or just that little bit of not nastiness, but just a bit of street smarts, I suppose, and just a bit of game management, I suppose, is the word now in the lexicon, isn't it? Kind of a bit more palatable about it. But that just seeing how it seemed to be it was going to be with the game. Like I had pretty much on my report written up until the last couple of minutes, and it was along those lines that once Derry did change their formation and got a hold of the game, Pats huffed and puffed a little bit, didn't really create an awful lot from free play. But then obviously they got that chance at the end, and in fairness, it was a good delivery by Creed into the box, and it was actually a far better finish. Probably reminiscent of Graham Gartland and his prime as a centre back at the near post. But what you call it, it was actually a far better finish than I kind of gave it credit for after watching the replay. He does get a lovely little flick on it, and he kind of held off Connolly as well, which is no mean feat. He done well. He was doing a few things well at that near post. So,
Dave, can I ask you a question on the set pieces thing? Because I watched the highlights back, and you see the game. A lot of the set pieces, especially in the second half, the Pats packed the goal line a lot.
Yeah,
you know, was it purely just against, because they obviously might think Brian Maher might struggle physically with it.
Do you know? Yeah, like see, that wasn't really. I didn't really cop that in the first half. It didn't seem that's what we're doing in the first half. It seemed to happen a couple of more times once Jake Mulroney came on, because he was taking them on his deliveries into the box. They just had a lot more zip about them and a lot more pace. A couple of deliveries before that, it was almost as if they were just kind of floated in, and maybe they're a bit more easily defended. But and then even the corner, like I'd say that I only seen more noticeable that they started doing it for the last 3 or 4 set pieces, because they seemed to have a few in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Before that, it didn't really seem as if that's what the tactic was. And I may have missed it. Sometimes you don't see those things all the time with everybody said, but it did seem more so it was a case of in the last 10 minutes. And because up until then, I thought, like, in fairness, like Derry seemed to deal with them relatively well. But I don't know. I'd say Derry would be a bit sick, because obviously it was the last one of the last kicks of the game, and kind of like just linking in with what happened with the Bowles and Cork game. Like if you look what happened last year with Bowles, like Bowles gave away so many stupid goals like last season, whereby like they weren't able to get any kind of momentum going at all. And whereas for the new team and the new manager, that's what Bowles are going to need this year. Like I don't think they may not be great at going chasing the game, but if they get ahead, they could be very good at just holding on to a lead a little bit. Like they weren't able to get that momentum really last season, and that's kind of maybe even with Pats there now. I think that could be a big one, because against Derry, I think the only team Pats didn't beat last season was Derry. You know, like Derry got Derry got 4-0.
They beat them there at home last year, and then beat them 1-0. So they've beaten them, took 5 goals off St. Pat's last year in Inchicore. Like, yeah,
and like I'd say the first 20 minutes, up until I say that kind of like. Maybe I think it was about 16, 20 minutes in the mark of the match when Derry changed things. Pats were the better team, and they looked very comfortable, and like you could see what's being worked on, I suppose, inside pre-season, and what Tim Clancy is working towards, and the fact that like if Jamie Lennon can stay fit for the whole season, because obviously he was a miss last year, and obviously the fact they've lost Adam O'Reilly, but you can see the kind of base in midfield there with Creed in there with Lennon, and then having Forrester a bit further up the pitch. And they have got some good options as well.
Yeah. Let's listen to the managers. So St. Pat's manager Tim Clancy, and then after that we'll listen to his Derry City counterpart Rory Higgins.
Tim, happy to come out of that with a point there in the end?
And listen, when you score late in the game the way we did, you're happy enough. But funny enough, it's something that we mentioned in there in the dressing room was the lads were all a little bit not gutted around, but they were a little bit disappointed that we only drew the game. Listen, we spoke all week about Derry are a very punishing team. They're very, very good players, and when you turn the ball over and lose it against them, they punish you, and that's what's happened for the first goal. Joe Redmond's got caught in it, which is an uncharacteristic mistake, and we have to get more streetways to stop making mistakes like that. But listen, to show the second half, we showed a good fight. We made a good few positive changes near the end. Listen, we're probably in a position now this season where you can took off Mark Doyle and took off Tommy Lonergan and Chris Forrester, and we ended up getting 4 other attackers on the pitch which contributed, so we're probably shows we're in a little bit of a better position than we were last year.
What was your thoughts on the performance overall? What pleased you, and maybe what didn't go so well?
I just think probably the final ball, the final third, a little bit of the quality that you need to score or create chances and finish, and probably let us down a little bit. But the build-up play, I thought Noah Lewis at the back was excellent in his in his debut. I thought Vlad was excellent as well, and Tommy Lonigan back at the club as well has done very well up front. So listen, as I said previously, anyone that finishes above Derry this year is going to be right at the top of the league.
We're so close to an opening night win. Does that late goal leave you with a sense of disappointment?
It does, Eric, and a lot kind of went against us here tonight. Michael picked up an injury in the warm-up. McJannet comes off in the first half. We're already without Diallo, Dummigan, Patrick McElhinney's just back from injury, so we were dealt a few blows, but I thought the players fought, and we weren't at our free-flowing best by any stretch. But first half we had the 3 best chances, and second half we give away too many set plays and dangerous enough areas, and eventually one of them caught us out.
Pat's made a few changes late on in the game, which seemed to bring them more to life. Was the pressure late on just too intense for you to try and hold out?
I think as I said, we give away too many free kicks, too many corners, and to be fair, when we did do that, we stood up 95% of the time and defended our box really well. But as I said, we just got caught in that one.
Should the first half have yielded more goals?
We've had Grado goes through as a brilliant chance. Jordan gets a great goal. We've had a few. Ollie gets one cleared off the line, so we've had a few chances, and we would have liked to have went in a couple up, but not to be. This is an extremely difficult venue. They're a good side, and it shows where we are when we've bodies missing, and we come here and we're disappointed leaving by a point.
All right, so that is Derry City manager Rory Higgins, who seems relatively satisfied in the circumstances, getting a point out of Richmond Park. But Graham, in regards to Shamrock Rovers, who are going to, obviously as reigning champions and with Derry sort of hot on their heels in terms of turning this into what is expected to be a 2-horse race, I'd imagine Stephen Bradley would be fairly happy with a point at Sligo Rovers, given the circumstances of being down to 10 men.
Yeah, I think he touched on after the game. He said a draw was probably a fair result. Sligo came out, in fairness. They had a couple of chances in the 11th minute. I think they had a bit of pressure. They had 3 shots on goal. I think Manus made 2 unbelievable saves. And then Bork pops up for a wonderful goal into that inside left channel. Clark has a chance then just around the 25th minute mark where he probably could kill the game. But obviously it all changes on the all changes really on the Lopez sending off, because I think Rovers were comfortable with the goal up, and maybe would have been a threat later on if Sligo had kept pushing. You maybe would have nicked another one on the counter attack, and then the sending off comes straight red for Lopez on Barlow. And Barlow.
What did you make of it actually? What did you make of the incident? Because I've seen the highlights of it, but it's quite far away, so it's obviously he raises his hand.
That's the thing. Like the simple fact is, by the letter of the law, it's a red card. Is it soft? Yeah, of course it's soft. But I'd be raging. I'd be raging as a player against. I'd be so disappointed to be sent off for that. But by the letter of the law, and it's a red card. But in the grey area of football and the way we're talking, it's like wasn't that bad? And it wasn't. He didn't hurt him. He didn't cause any physical harm to Barlow. But in this day and age, you can't raise your hands to people's face, whether it's to grab them by the throat or to put their hand on their face. So he's given it's one of those cliches that'll pop up on thing, but he's given the ref a chance to send them off, and that's what's happened. And the ref took it. And they're always a little bit, I always find referees at the start of every season, they tend to be a little bit card happy in the first few games because they're trying to lay down markers for the rest of the season, and then it tends to ease off then. But it was the turning point in the game, and then Sligo probably got that bit of momentum and sense that he could have a go, and he did push, in fairness. Like I said, Farrell hits the post. Fitzgerald has a chance in the 83rd minute. I think it ends up being a save again from Manus, and it just shows you his importance. And then with a last-minute goal from a corner, it's not cleared properly from a Shamrock Rovers point of view. It's actually a really good volley to keep that composure from Browning in the last couple of minutes of the game. It's one of those volleys that you could easily just probably overcommit to it and hit it too hard, and it goes over, and you might get a little reaction from the crowd. But it's bounced into the corner. He's controlled the volley lovely. He knows it's going through bodies, and Manus might be unsighted. So it's a really controlled, clever finish from Lucas Browning, and like you said, like Stephen said himself, he probably deserved a draw on the night.
Yeah, and on the other hand, a great finish as well in the UCD draw at Dundalk. So Kieran Behan with the free kick to equalise it now. Graham, from a Dundalk point of view, like if we look at the result, like we've talked about, like a couple of draws where both teams on either side have been happy. I would imagine Dundalk are going to be bitterly disappointed starting off at home with the draw against UCD, whereas UCD are showing that they can't be written off.
No, and I think the frustration is they probably had so much of the ball, Dundalk, but the UCD limited them to half chances. Healy makes a great save with the penalty. In fairness to him, it's a really good save. It's right in the corner. He gets down so well. He gets across the goal so well and touches around the post with a strong left hand. I actually thought Dundalk goal was really good. Ainsley down the left hand side puts in a clever cross. Hubin's probably taken the touch for himself, but Martin comes in off that left hand side and slots it lovely, and it just looked like a really clever goal, even probably though it wasn't meant to be that way. But the free kick from Behan, he actually wins the free kick himself, because just before that he's checking and chopping, and he looks to have really good balance and a really good left foot, and then he steps up and puts a wonderful free kick into the top corner. Shepherd gets a hand to it, but he's not keeping her out. It was a fantastic free kick, and I don't know, like when I went through the bodies they lost last week, and it's scary. They lost Kerrigan, Whelan, Lonergan, Sean Brennan, Evan Caffrey, Sorrow, the centre back, and they lost Dylan Duffy. These are like all young players that like done really well to keep UCD in the league last season. They've lost all of them, who are regular players for them. Lonergan comes in and takes over from Whelan, obviously, but that's a fantastic amount of talent that goes out of your football club. And for them to, in the first game of the season, go up and get a draw in Dundalk is brilliant. And full credit to Andy Moyler, because they are renowned for playing good football, but he's brought a bit of steel and a bit of heart into that team as well. And full credit to them.
Yeah, and the other game that also ended in a draw, Anthony, was the Shelbourne Drogheda one, which was 0-0, but not for want of Shelbourne trying. I mean, the amount of glaring opportunities they had. Matty Smith probably should have scored one, and then Sean Boyd hits the post, and Paddy Barrett hits the crossbar. Damien Duff, I'm sure, will be happy with the attacking side from them, but as you said earlier on, from a Drogheda point of view, they just have that knack of being able to dig out points, as we saw last season.
I think you're being generous to Matty Smith.
I know, yeah.
That was a hell of a miss. Look, 32 free kicks in that match, 8 cards. I mean, I was kind of keeping an eye on it as it was going on. Was 3 yellows in the first 15 minutes. There's a bit of needle between those two teams left over from last season. So I think it was a scrappy, fairly physical game. And yeah, Shells definitely had the better of the chances and the better of the possession. But Drogheda dug it out. It's going to be hard for Drogheda, but they brought in 2 young lads from Lincoln again this year. I think they have a decent relationship with Lincoln. Elijah Ahui is a young fullback. They're only 18, him and Freddie Draper. And Ahui particularly did very well by all accounts. Really aggressive and strong. 2 kids going into a tough game like that at Tolka Park, first night up. They'll take that point all day, get out of there. It's a decent start for them. The thing with Shells is that, like, last season, I think over a fifth of their goals came from penalties. And that's the thing about them. You just worry about where the goals are going to come from. Duff has already said there was hopes they were going to get outside investment over the winter from the Southampton owners. There was strong speculation that was going to come. It never came. So he has said, like, they had certain targets that they just couldn't afford. So it's another season of him, getting them on the training pitch, getting them as well drilled as possible, and trying to improve young players. But it was a frustrating night for them. I think they'll be okay. But it'd be sort of, I said before, like last week we were chatting about it, and I think Shells will be in and around where they finished last season. Were they 7th last season? 6th?
Yeah.
7th, yeah.
7th, yeah.
I think it'll be similar again this year for them. I think they'll be fine, but it's hard for them to kick on, until maybe a little more investment comes into them.
Yeah,
and even Sean Boyd is massive for them, and he's vital and he's excellent. I think they had 60% possession in the game. They had 11 scoring attempts, but they had 0 on target.
Yeah,
and then you look at Drop. They're the same. They had 7 attempts and 1 on target. So it's not like Anthony said, it's they're getting into great positions, and that some of that play is really, really good. But you have to hit the target to score goals. Like, you know, you have to give yourself a chance to score. And maybe sometimes, like you said, Boyd hits the post with a great effort. That's not classed as a target now, but it is a really good effort. But like that, they're always going to be dogged. They're going to play good football when they can. They're going to be competitive under Damien. He's going to demand off them a lot. But I think the frustration will come is that they're maybe not even getting shots on target.
Yeah. Well, the only thing, it's a fair point. You can't, like this, let's be honest, like the miss from Matty Smith, like it's, like you can't, like, you know what I mean? Like he
can't legislate for that.
He literally misses an open goal. Like it's worse than Ronnie Rosenthal back in the day. Do you know what I mean? Remember that miss, that famous miss from
the blast of the past, isn't it?
You know what I mean? Oh, stop. Like it's one of them where, and obviously Boyd hitting the post, and he is going to have a big season because he was really impressive last year. Although I think he, up until a point, he was almost on as many yellow cards as he was goals, but he finished the season very strongly as well. But he's obviously will be a big player. But it was interesting, even in the off season, I know when Damien Duff was talking about that, the fact that maybe he was expecting his budget could have been quadrupled, that investment from Sport Republic had happened. But bringing in the likes of, say, a Paddy Barrett, because he spoke about wanting a team needing a bit more personality about it and having a bit more just experience in there as well, which is quite telling. But I don't know. I think Graham said that at the very start. It's the first game of the season as well. Yeah. But like when you see that miss, like if he scores that goal, it's game over because Drogheda aren't scoring that game. Drogheda just aren't going to score in that game. They were like, I don't know, obviously they are one of the part-time teams, but there's a few interesting things just on what the lads have already spoken about, just to touch on it because it's interesting. So with the red card for Lopez, that can now be appealed. So this is the first time. Right, yeah. This is the first, and Rovers have decided not to appeal it. So they're not going to obviously go for it. This will be the first time now where, like before, if a fella got sent off, there was no right of appeal. You know what I mean? And like, let's be honest, there was quite a few red cards last year where they would have been overturned. So that's going to be interesting this season to see how that'll play out. But also, and it's kind of in the first division where John Caulfield gets a yellow card, but it's because of what Ollie Horgan does. So basically now as well, and it happened with Tim Clancy. Tim Clancy got a yellow card because he got into a scuffle. I can't remember the player. When the player came into his technical area to get the ball back, even though I think it was a patch throw, but because he got involved with it, Clancy was the one who got the yellow card. So the manager now is responsible for everybody on the bench as well as the staff. So he'll be the one. Yeah, so this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Because maybe before it could be a case of, you know, you have your Rottweilers beside you on the bench if needs be to have a word just to keep the manager safe a little bit. Whereas now it's the manager is the one who will be responsible for everybody on the bench. So that's going to be interesting as the season goes on, how that'll go.
Good. Yeah, so you keep your Rottweilers muzzled, essentially, is the message here.
Although an interesting one, a colleague of mine, I won't say who, did say, well, what happens if a player gets dropped by a manager, is a bit annoyed by him, and says, you know what, I'm going to get him booked here by acting the man got on the bench.
Anyway, this Friday, in terms of Shelbourne, at least, they're going to be at St. Pat, so that's a tough game for them, 7:45 p.m. kickoff. And then also Bohemians hosting Dundalk, Derry City up against Cork City, Drogheda United against Shamrock Rovers, and then UCD hosting Sligo Rovers. Just turn our attentions to the first division. Wexford lost 3-0 to Waterford, who would be one of the favourites for promotion. Galway United won 2-1 at Finn Harps in difficult conditions. Treaty United lost 1-0 at home to Bray Wanderers. Ian Ryan's first competitive game in charge, and then Kerry FC in their League of Ireland debut lost 2-0 at home to Cove Ramblers, and Longford Town defeated 3-1 by Athlone Town in the Midlands Derby to start off. But Graham, briefly on this division, it's already shaking out as Waterford and Galway United, the two favourites for automatic promotion, sort of already making really good starts.
Yeah, I think Waterford had a great start. I think they started well last year as well. I'm not sure if it was the same fixture that they started well in, or it might have been the other way around where Wexford beat Waterford. But they've got a lot of investment in from Fleetwood. John Walters has gone in, and they're obviously getting players through the system there to give them game time. I think they've stuck with the manager that they had last year that done really well with them, got them into the playoffs after he took over. So there seems to be a bit of continuity there for the first time in a while, because they tend to chop and change quite a bit. But yeah, it looks like it's shaping up as Waterford and Galway. They're probably the teams in that division that have the biggest budget and investment in them. And so it looked like it could be a 2-horse race. Bray, that's a great result for Bray going away to Treaty, because Treaty's a tough place to go. Ian Ryan's going to get the both best out of that squad. I was talking to James Kelly recently, and he's just trying to put together a good young team that will play the right way and run and push. So I think he'd be disappointed with that result. Kerry is just about getting a platform that he can build on. They come into the league. It's great. It's everything. It's a great news story. Really happy for Billy Dennehy and everybody down in Kerry. It's great that they have football in every part of the country. But again, it's about sort of just giving them a platform to build on this season. Longford at loan, then it's just about consistency. But that was a strange result I didn't see coming either. At loan beating Longford 3-1, considering I think Longford had done really well against them in all the games last season. So,
the thing with that loan as well, isn't it interesting? Like at the end of last season, they seemed to pick up when they had started the season so badly as well.
I'm sorry, Dave Rogers going in at Finn Harps. Finn Harps are obviously Holly Organ's gone in as number 2 at Galway, and they've changed. Maybe they're trying to bring in a lot more local players into the group, get a connection back with the community, and try and build from there. So Dave Rogers had a lot of pedigree as a coach. He's coached over in Forest recently as well. So he looks like he's trying to galvanise the club and drive it forward. So they're always going to give tough games as well, and they'll want to be in the mix between Waterford, Galway as well. So it's an interesting first division this year.
Yeah, before we go, the Champions League coverage this week on RT2 and RT Player. Tuesday night, it is Liverpool against Real Madrid, so that's definitely going to be worth watching. And Anthony, I suppose the mood music for both clubs is sort of changing in the last couple of weeks. If we'd been recording this maybe about a month ago, this wouldn't have been the most intriguing of games, both sides out of form, but slowly Liverpool seem to be just picking up results, if not performances.
I think the performances couldn't have got worse for Liverpool after Brighton, Wolves. There was another game against the team of that sort of ilk where they were not just beaten, Raf, actually hammered, like really badly beaten. They've just got a bit more balance in the midfield. The young lad Bacetic has done really well for them, and it's kind of Fabinho and Henderson are sort of playing themselves back into form. I think they're just trying to salvage that season now, Liverpool. I wouldn't be surprised if they tailed off again. There's too many structural issues in the team. That the midfield is too old. And Bacetic is an excellent player, by the way, really good prospect. But if you're hanging your hat on an 18-year-old midfielder to solve those issues, you've got a problem. You've got a problem, because after a while, because of his age and the fact that he's still developing and the pressure of playing in the Premier League, he's probably going to dip. He'll naturally dip. So it feels like, I don't know, we'll see. Like, they bet a bad Everton team at Anfield. I know Everton had a good win on Saturday, but Everton are 17th in the league for a reason. And to be fair, they popped Newcastle on Saturday early and then didn't play well for the rest of the match. So still a lot of question marks around Liverpool. I think they'll give it a lash in the first leg against Real Madrid, but I don't think they're coming through that tie, to be honest.
Yeah, Graham, what have you made of Liverpool from what you've seen of them, especially structurally, particularly before they started picking up results?
They're trying to play with the energy and the aggression that they had without having the legs to do it at times, and they're a little bit short. And when you're short with that, aggression and that intensity, your body's not able to do it, or physically not able to play with it, you get played around and you get run around. And because they like to push, so how I look at it when they're pressing is whatever side they're pressing, the opposite. If they press to the right hand side, Robertson will commit and will drive forward and press fullback to fullback, and then all the three backlots slide over, and they generally leave a 3v3, and that's okay when the pressure was good, because the balls out then weren't very accurate, or defenders would panic and clip it, and then the likes of Van Dijk would hoover up, or Fabinho would hoover up, and then they play from that platform. Now the defenders are getting a little bit more time because the press is just a bit off, and the midfielders aren't able to get to their players, so their midfielders are able to turn and play, and then they're 3-for-3. I agree a little bit with Anthony. They have improved. And I think freeing up Núñez as a left-sided striker that he just causes havoc and they don't have to rely on him to build play through him has helped. That they give him a little bit more freedom out on that left-hand side. He's a threat in 1v1 situations. I do agree. I think the midfield balance is a little bit off. I think the right side of their defence gives up too many chances. Alisson, even in the Newcastle game, still had to make 3 top-class saves in the game. Now, their goals are brilliant. And attacking-wise, Salah is still a threat because he pops in and plays lovely assists. But they're off in every little aspect of their game. They're off in their attacking play, and they're off their midfield play, and they're off in their defensive structure by that 1%. But that adds up. That adds up over the course of a season to not enough wins on the board. So sometimes I think you can't go and press everything. You just need to sit back into a shape and let teams have a ball. And Ten Hag does it really well at United against the bigger teams. They go, we can't go toe to toe with you at this point in time. We're not there in our development. And mentally, it's hard for Liverpool to go back and go, well, we're not with you now at this point in time. We need to go back and be a counter-attacking team. They haven't been built on that. So it's very hard to roll back in that mental side of we can't go toe to toe with everybody. So I agree a little bit with Anthony in that sense of it. Again, if they're going to play the midfielder, they need legs around him because he isn't athletic. He's a wonderful technical footballer, but he's going to have to build up his power and his mental and physical stamina to play in there for Liverpool.
Yeah, and that's on RT2 and RT Player Tuesday night. And the only maybe saving grace is Real Madrid are a bit off it, but then you say that all the time, and then they go on and win the Champions League at the end of the season. So it
was interesting. I done a coaching course. I done a coaching course one time, and I was on it, and there was a fella talking about Real Madrid, and he spoke about basically the Real Madrid model and what they try and do, and it was just so interesting. They basically were like, they go with a goalkeeper, 2 centre backs, and a striker. And everyone else has rotation. That's the way they play. It's like, listen, we have these fixed positions, and everyone else just get us footballers. We'll work out the rest, and that makes it really hard to play against because they're so unpredictable, and all the players can rotate into different positions. And I was like, right, that was an interesting way of looking at it, like, you know.
Yeah, and finally, before we go, actually, because you've talked about Evan Ferguson a lot, even kind of, you know, you remember him as a baby, played against his father, Barry, or played with his father, Barry, I should say.
Played against him as well. Barry tried to get me sent off a few times.
But just what have you made of Evan Ferguson the last while? Because I think the last time we were speaking, it was before he had scored his first Premier League goal. He's since gone on to score 3 goals. He hadn't been capped by the Ireland senior team at that point either. He's got 2 caps now, and now he's sort of like the we're all hanging our hats on him against France, maybe being the leading light. What have you made of him in the last couple of months?
It's everything you'd expect from Evan, and having known Barry well and still speak to Barry when I see him. I live up beside Barry in Bettystown, so I'd see him going to the gym in the mornings, and I'd have a chat with him. But it's everything you'd expect from Evan in that. The narrative around Evan was that he had talent and ability, but it was his attitude that was the standout, and his demeanour and his mental sort of toughness. And he has all that, and you know, I'm sure Barry and Sarah have helped with that because of the sporting background with Barry. But he seems to be quite a relaxed man now, and he takes things in his stride. But he's obviously hungry to be successful as well, and you can see that in him. His physicality is fantastic. He's a great size. He has power and his pace, and as a modern number 9, in terms of if you're going to play him up front through the middle by himself, he has enough pace to trouble you down the sides, and he's enough presence to hold the ball up, and he can make chances for himself. He can get on the end of chances from crosses into the box too. So he still has a lot of development stages to go, but he's on the right track, and I don't think ever his attitude towards the game or his hunger to play will ever come into question.
Yeah, and David, I suppose before we go, one of the tabloids was linking him with Chelsea and Tottenham, kind of interestingly enough. So he is. It's gone from sort of being impressed with his performances to now kind of linking him with big clubs. Now again, his development probably is going to be best helped, staying at Brighton and getting as much game time as possible, though.
Well, yeah, and I suppose he only signed a new contract, wasn't it, back in October? It was actually interesting. It's amazing how quickly things can change, because after he made his debut for Ireland, he did a promotion gig for the FAI's Football for All kind of program in his school. And the talk then was he was going to go on loan to the championship. This was back around, would have been late November, early December. But then obviously with the World Cup being on and he was in working with the Zebri, and I think this is one of the more impressive aspects, rather than obviously it's great, you see him get the goals, but it's more so a case of for the teenager to be trusted in that position in a team like that. It's because he's taken on information. It's because he's understanding what's being asked of him, and he has the temperament. And word spreads on football player, like, he would have been well known, obviously, from by different clubs. Now he's getting linked with those clubs because any player at that age who does have, not to use Mika Richards, but burst on the scene a little bit and actually have such a big impression like that, they're going to be like, right, he's the real deal in terms of he's capable of doing it. But I said this before, you kind of, even up until with the Irish hat on up until March, you kind of just want to see him keep on playing and keep on developing. You don't mind if he doesn't be banging in the goals. Obviously, don't get me wrong, it's great if he scored and then he's coming in. But if you see a young lad like him still playing games regularly and just getting that experience, because it seems as if he's the type of fella who, like any good player, you tell them something once and they take it on and they don't need to be told a few times. And likewise, he might learn from stuff in games. He doesn't need to kind of make the same mistakes a few times or be told a few times after games what you should be doing. It's clear that the more games he gets early on, he could be one of those players that uses it to build a career rather than being one of those who burns really brightly very quickly and then fades away. So that's the hope with Evan Ferguson, to be honest. And listen, if he gets a move, he gets a move. But the big thing for him is just to keep on playing, because it's just going to do him the world of good.
Yeah, and that France game is only about a month away anyway, so the squad probably, give or take, about 3 weeks away from being named. So it'll be interesting. In
fairness, I'd say the FAI are absolutely delighted that he's not going to miss the Latvia friendly, because that means the game that'll even be, some of the people who are buying those duo tickets will definitely be turning up to that game to see if he plays in that game, or will they even make the decision to maybe not risk him in it in case they need him? Because up until that injury, without dragging it out to point out about it, up until that injury against Liverpool, when it was looked upon as if, like, Stephen Kenny was at that game, like, that was when they were beginning to look, right, how are we going to use him? You know what I mean? Because he has everything for what's going to be needed in that France game, of holding up the ball, but also being able to mix it up and run the channels as well. So it's just it's going to be a big month for him, really will, for him and for Ireland.
He's the most informed striker we have playing at the highest level.
Yeah,
that's whether you take his age out of it. What other strikers playing at the Premiership level and scoring goals, and there's nobody, like, all the rest of the strikers are playing, they're scoring, but they're not playing at that level. So take his age out of it, he's the most informed striker at the highest level.
Yeah, and anyway, as the saying goes, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So we'll see. He'll certainly be in the squad anyway, for sure. Whether he starts or not, we'll find out in due course. But anyway, Anthony, enjoy Marbella. We'll be reading your match report on the website, and also Graham Gartland and David Sneyd, thanks for coming on this week.
Pleasure. Thanks, lads. Thank you.